Okay guys, the 1.49 update has officially been released for quite some time now, and I think I should leave some feedback about it, just like I did almost 3 years ago. I do have to say I am very disappointed. In the beta phases of the game, I was really hoping for what was being tested to be reverted or changed drastically, but that never happened, at least for now. But let's take things slow and talk about everything. Let's start off with possibly the biggest change Critical Force has done in quite some time, the Molotov, or incendiary grenade is what they call it. The idea is of course not even that horrible. The community has been very curious about this, possibly for years. However, it is interesting that Critical Force was declining such idea throughout the years, with the simple reasoning that older devices would never be able to handle it. Well, they must have figured it out, right? Well, not really. Here's two examples of current top-level players in the scene, both 120/144Hz devices respectively, and they achieve half of that if they're lucky. Now, besides this, there also is the Molotov itself. You'd think, wow, what a great way to change the meta and mechanics of the game, only to realize the Molotov was way too powerful. Most bomb sites are burned to death with 3 Molotovs because the Molotov has such a huge radius. Especially for Critical Ops, which features mostly compact maps, it is ridiculous to even think about. You might think, oh, let's smoke everything off, that will extinguish the Molotov, right? Well, no, it does not even do that. And even if it stops the players from burning, you are now essentially fighting on a bomb set with 3 to 5 smoke grenades at the same time, and that is just pure chaos on its own. Molotovs have been in use in cups and especially in the current ongoing Polaris Major, and the feedback about a meta change during a major is as good as you could expect. But moving away from the Molotov for now, let's talk about other big changes. And arguably the biggest change of this update is the recoil changes for the SG and AUG, but also the AR-15 and U ratio. Starting off with the smallest change, being the U ratio, it now has less bullets in its magazine. Safe to say this is actually pretty positive of a change since honestly the U ratio has been strong already as it was, so this is a reasonable nerf. This makes the U ratio still usable without ruining it. But speaking of ruining things, let's talk about the so-called meta rifles, the AUG and the SG. Now of course, for most, if not all the meta changes, one developer specifically, known as IAS or Adject, is reasonable for the esports side of things, and this includes things like meta changes or gameplay changes. These changes have been positive until the change of the AUG and SG. Why, you might ask? Well, the recoil specifically has been targeted for these rifles, and the goal behind this was to lower the usage of the rifles. According to IAS, these weapons are used anywhere from 50 to 75% per game. Now, I don't know if this is based on ranks, scrims, or whatever, but it does make sense. Any round where your economy isn't too bad, where you can't force an AUG with Kevlar, you have to play M4, or you have to go eco in general, you simply buy these rifles. This nerf in particular didn't really do anything besides virtually dropping the usage to 0% however, because majority of the competitive players now rely on the SCAR and HK, and obviously the M4 and AK mostly anyway. So this did nothing but completely ruin the popularity, which was not the initial goal. The initial goal, according to Adject, was around 20%. And this is very understandable, because the recoils feel like playing Jenga, considering the horizontal drift of the recoil within the first 4 bullets of both guns, and the AUG just going mayhem in general. So with the ridiculous recoil of the AUG and SG, instead of achieving 20%, we have achieved maybe 5%, which is obviously far from the goal. The SG is still a little playable and usable, and you could use it once you get used to it, but then again there is the AUG, which is completely horrendous. The issue with this is that you have to spend the better part of 2 to 3 years building a meta that revolves around higher rate of fire gameplay with the SG and AUG, only to completely destroy it in one update. Not to mention things like muscle memory for the recoil in general. Not only was this method of rebalancing not the best approach whatsoever to the problem that the game had in hand, it was also probably done in the worst way possible, but I will come back to this later. Let's talk about the AR-15. The AR-15 has so-called easier recoil and does slightly more damage, although to be fully honest, it doesn't feel quite good at all. It feels pretty much the exact same. The scoped in recoil still feels like it is a lot, especially if you compare it to the SCAR, but that might just be me who never used the AR-15 and so is not used to the gun in general. It just feels pretty much the same, is all I'm saying. Another major problem are the servers. The pack loss thing from I don't know, like 5 years ago, has been added back, which is the right idea, but not really, if all you're gonna do is ruin the servers with it. Especially from the NA region, there has been countless server complaints, and also personally, ever since the update dropped, I feel like my enemies just consume more bullets. You might say just hit the headshot, well that's what I'm doing, but even that registers maybe a quarter of a second later, which is a lot by the way. But not all things were bad about this update. There have also been countless amounts of small changes, like the slightly map changes on Grounded and Legacy, which to be honest, were much needed for a Legacy, apart from the double doors change, which kind of feels weird. The new radar now showing your teammates or the enemies if they're above or below you, new agents which look nice, or the revamp of the marketplace. All these are quite nice, and I don't want to get into them too much, since they're not really an issue. There are also some questionable changes, like the new scoreboard button, which should be optional in settings, being able to open one case at a time maximum, which is so random considering they added the exact opposite of this feature many years ago, or the new agent voice lines. I won't even get into how loud their voices are, But why change them in the first place? Sure, the voice lines are outdated, voice lines might be changed because of the new incendiary, you didn't have the same person who did the voice lines for the incendiary, but that's literally what AI exists for. You change perfectly normal and acceptable voice lines only for the Molotov, which is honestly unnecessary. But it is also kind of understandable. What I'm trying to say is the voice lines are not it. Speaking of utility, there has been some tweaks, and not for the better for that matter. Firstly, the purchase limit of all utilities capped at 1 and the flashbang at 2 does have the right idea, but it is executed in the wrong way. All this does is eliminate the ability to drop utility for teammates in general. Now I do have to say, the limit for the Molotov and grenade makes sense as they do damage and those can be round changing, but the flash and smoke are arguably the most popular utilities in this game, with much needed versatility, and thus capping the smoke at only 1 is not the right idea. The flash limit at 2 is okay, so this means pretty much everyone in your team gets to have a flashbang at some point. The only way to drop extra utility is if you stay alive, pick up or keep utility from the last round, and then drop it to buy your own again, which is a good idea as well, but it also sort of destroys the purpose of capping it. Picture the CT-sided players all staying alive and none of their players use the Molotov. They can drop an extra Molotov and close off one singular place for 100 seconds. Picture sore middle, for example, which is literally almost the entire round or multiple parts of the map for way longer than the initial 10 seconds that the Molotov serves. Or they just use the Molotovs for retakes. The ideas are endless here. Point being, it ruins the purchase limit cap idea. So whilst I do think the idea is nice, the execution, once again, is wrong. And whilst I'm talking about utility, I just have to ask, where did Critical Force get the idea from to change the trail color of utilities? I do think the new white flash trail looks quite good, but the grenade trail should still be red. The trail of the grenade being yellow literally makes me think it's a flashbang. Every time I turn around, seeing a yellow trail, I take double the damage I could have avoided thinking it's a flashbang. The flashbang itself, I can identify easily from the white trail, which is a good trail. The smoke should rather be green or gray instead of being blue. The Molotov, I suppose, is pretty okay. It could be orange, but the grenade one should turn back to red. Now, of course, criticism is one thing, but suggesting to make things better is another. And the first thing that obviously comes in question are the recoils of the AUG and SG. The goal is to reduce the usage, so why not make it more expensive? And if you really want to reduce the power and balance it, why not reduce the fire rate? Adject has actually made polls for competitive players to vote on, and to put it very simply, things are looking up. The same can be said about Molotovs. Spino has made some polls for competitive players to vote, and multiple nerfs have been favored for the incendiary. Now, that pretty much sums the update, but if I were to add things that I would personally also change, the video would be way too long, and I don't want to make the video too long. I do really hope this video will have an impact on Critical Ops in a positive manner. I have taken a break from Critical Ops many times, and even for long periods of time, but never quit the game entirely, simply because I enjoy playing the game, and I also enjoy playing competitively. I have played competitively for many years now, I think since 2018 or 2019, and I started Critical Ops in 2016, and have been through countless eras of Critical Ops, and it is fair to say this is the worst era since Heavy Kevlar was added. Critical Ops needs to change, and it needs to change now, and I hope I am bringing enough awareness about this. With that being said, peace.